The next person up is Gerard Babitts, who we discovered worked at Turner Broadcasting not that long ago. Today, he's a group leader for the global social media at HEINZ'S. He describes himself as an enterprise conductor, cross-functional handholder, digital strategizer, and content developer. And he joined the Heinz Company in February 2011 from the Coca-Cola Company, where he was managing the company's global and enterprise social media initiatives in YouTube and Twitter. And prior to this, he was managing social and digital marketing for Aflac and Turner Broadcasting, and oversaw new product development. So please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have a quick question. How many of you in here have ever scanned a QR code? Anybody? Okay, that's probably a little bit higher than the normal average. But my presentation is going to be a little bit different than most of the ones you've seen today. Mine actually focuses more on B2C and B2B, but I think it has a lot of relevance for what we're talking about in the enterprise, because what we found at Heinz with QR codes is that it's a phenomenal bridge between the physical and the digital, and it's a phenomenal way to message something to people who may not be getting your message otherwise. And I'll talk to you about how we've done that in a little bit, but first I think it's worthwhile to talk about a little bit of the history and where we are with QR codes today. So they have a functional origin, started in the mid-90s by a Toyota subsidiary who used QR codes principally to track parts and inventory. You could store a lot more information on a QR code than you ever could on a barcode, a traditional barcode, and they started off purely as a tool for industry. But nowadays, when it's done successfully, especially in parts of Asia, it's a phenomenal tool for convenience for shopping in this particular instance, or convenience in terms of translating your message. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this example from a few years ago. Tesco in South Korea put up these virtual shopping or grocery stores in subways, in public transport areas, because people are so strapped for time that while they're waiting for their subways to go home, they can scan multiple things at a particular grocery store, get on the subway, and by the time they get home, it's been delivered to their house. So that's the real power of something like a QR code. The problem, though, is that it's got low awareness. Some of you in here raised your hands, some of you didn't. I'm here to tell you most consumers have no idea what they are and how they actually work and what they're supposed to do with them. I think they tend to confuse most people. Recent surveys in the US found that students, college students, who you would presume would be a little bit more adventurous and technologically advanced, only about 21% actually knew what to do with the QR code. So there's a real awareness problem. They haven't been marketed correctly, and we in the marketing world, in the product world, as well as in the technology world, haven't done a very good job of educating people. The only caveat to this is in parts of Asia, like Korea or like Japan, very high awareness, very high usage, and they also benefit from having much better experiences than we have in the US. This is actually a QR code scan from an American Express QR code, and you would think a big brand like that would have it buttoned up and have it working correctly. But when you have bad experiences like this, it turns people off. They never want to scan one ever again, right? You only get 1 or 2 shots with this stuff. And then you have the problem that it's not smartphone native. In Asia, a number of the smartphones have the app built into your phone, but in the West, it doesn't exist. You've got to first download the app, then you've got to scan, and then you get the experience. So you're already talking about quite a few barriers that people have to jump through, and most people just don't have the time or the energy or the curiosity to take part in that. And the biggest problem is that there's no payoff, there's no value, right? So if you're gonna ask me to download an app and then you're gonna ask me to scan something, what's in it for me, right? And too often the values have stunk. It's been either directed to a website or just a mirror image of maybe the ad that you were scanning in a magazine. And this is a really good example. This is Sun-Made Raisins, a very popular, iconic brand in the US, and they just slapped a QR code on there. And I presume no one scanned it because I would think most people would think that's some sort of internal tracking inventory mechanism for Sun-Made, but it's not. It takes you to an actually pretty cool Sun-Made experience and contest that they had, but they didn't tell anybody what it was about. So that's a huge waste. The other big problem is that it's really bad execution, right? How many of us have seen QR codes in really, really bad places? And this is a really good example, right? I mean, how could you even scan that? You know, you wouldn't want to get behind the bus, let alone if you were in the car, you wouldn't really be able to pick it up at that distance. So people oftentimes don't think about, you know, the utility of it. Or this is the even worse one. And these are all real QR codes, right? And so I don't know how many people in here have come from marketing, but I can absolutely see someone being in a marketing meeting saying, oh, there's this thing called a QR code, and we're going to put it in a banner, and people will scan it, not realizing that you'd never be able to scan that. Not only is it moving, but it's way too far away, right? So, but there is good news, and the good news is that, and I'm sure most of you have anecdotal or have seen information about this, smartphones are exploding and are going to become the dominant form of mobile for most of us in the entire world, let alone the developed world, right? So just this year alone, in the last quarter, shipments and sales have almost gone up 50%. Almost 800 million smartphone handsets are going to be shipped this year. In countries like the US, we've already reached the tipping point. Over 50% of people who have mobile phones have smartphones. And within Europe itself, it ranges anywhere from 30 to a little bit over 50. But that's what's coming down the pike. And there's no doubt that what's going to happen is that people will begin to use these smartphones like you use your laptops or like you use your desktop or even like you use your tablet, that this will be the primary way that people find out information, right? And if you can deliver that information to them without them having to actually type in the URL, if they can just scan it, that's pretty powerful stuff. More good news is that the percentage of people who are actually beginning to scan in the developed markets, particularly in the West, have actually started to go up. Now, there's a big gap. You know, Italy has 10%, and the US has a little over 20%, and this was just from last December. So these numbers, I presume, have gone up significantly since then. And even more good news is that in the US, AT&T, which is the dominant, if not one of the two dominant mobile providers in the US, has seen 1,000% increase, right? Is that almost 770% increase in the scan of QR codes in just the last year. Those are pretty incredible numbers, and what it means is that people are getting a little bit more comfortable with scanning them and understanding what's in it for them. And the sign that it's starting to work is that you have a number of top-line iconic brands who are using QR codes for a multitude of executions. You have a company like Coca-Cola that uses QR codes as part of their loyalty program in some countries, right? It's easier than necessarily typing in the code underneath a bottle cap. Or you have companies like HP who've used QR codes as a means to deliver better explanations and better handbooks, user handbooks, to people who buy their products. Or you have companies like McDonald's who are now using it, at least in the US, as a means to deliver nutritional and calorie information, which is very valuable to most people in the States, or at least people say it is. Or someone like Taco Bell, who used it to deliver limited edition, exclusive to Taco Bell, MTV music video content. So there's value. So if you're a Taco Bell customer and you're sitting in the restaurant and you're eating your taco, you have the chance to actually watch some videos while you're there that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. So there's value in that. So now we get to Heinz. Heinz has had what I consider to be pretty phenomenal success with QR codes. And you wouldn't necessarily think we would, because a number of, putting those other brands aside that we just talked about, a number of brands haven't had the best success, and we can use the raisin example a few pages ago to notice that. The background on Heinz is that we began using QR codes at our North American company, really our US company, back in July of last year. Phenomenal success, and we did it principally because we began rolling out the Coca-Cola plant bottle technology in our plastic that we use in our upside-down tabletops. And the reason we did it was we wanted to educate people as to our sustainable efforts to make the world a better place, and what better way to educate people than to take them somewhere else and learn about it. So we used a QR code that sits on the bottle that sits in a phenomenal amount of restaurants in the United States to give that opportunity for people to not only find out about us, because honestly, most people don't really care, but when you entice them with the idea that, hey, learn about this and win something, now they care, right? So it was so successful that we continued it in the fall, we continued it the following spring, and it's ongoing for us. It's something that we, at our food service side, the side that services restaurants in the United States, have no plans to discontinue at any point in time. It's been a phenomenal, phenomenal success for us. The principal reasons, and this is the principal reason why any QR code succeeds, so it doesn't matter whether it's on a bottle of ketchup or whether it's on any of your particular products. First of all, it has to do with context and location. So we benefit from the idea that the bottle sits on a table, you place your order, and now you've got 15 minutes with nothing to do, right? You've got time to kill. The bottle's staring you at the eye. We give you an explanation of what it's about. It's not like the raisin example where you have no idea what it's for. There's copy on there that tells you what to do in order to access this information. That's the clarity part. There's a concrete value. We either associate it with a contest or we associate it with a number of our philanthropic efforts, which people tend to love, and they gain value from it. It's incredibly functional and easy to use. And we also tap into the emotions that people have related to the content that they ultimately access. And that's also a really important point, because we have two principal things that we try to accomplish with QR codes. We try to satisfy our customers, the restaurants and large chains who bring in our product, and ultimately sell it. As a consumer products company, at the end of the day, all we care about is whether you buy our product or not. It's real simple, right? So we can do all sorts of brand building, we can do all sorts of things to talk about our product, but if it doesn't, in the parlance of Heinz, if it doesn't move cases, we don't do it, right? So we're all about selling product to our customers. At the same time, it's also about building up consumer loyalty, which ultimately translates to product sales. And what we find as it relates to social is that we have not only consumers on the bottom talking about how incredibly impressed they are that we support certain philanthropic efforts that they learned about as a result of the QR code on the bottle, but we also have trade organizations as well as restaurants who talk about how impressed they are with it and how it makes them look good, right? You know, you look at the top one, it's from a recycling organization in Illinois, and their first person they talk about is Red Robin, which is a restaurant chain in the United States. Now, Red Robin really has nothing to do with the QR code, but it happens to be in their restaurant, so they actually get an associated benefit from that. That works out for us because we make our customers happy, we make our consumers happy, and it ends up being a win-win. The tactics that we tend to associate with them are sweepstakes, which is a no-brainer, because in the world of social media, the number one reason people follow brands is they want something. They want a freebie, they want a discount, they want to win something. They're not really friends with you just because they want to be friends with you. They want something concrete. This is the same principle. You offer someone the opportunity to win money, you offer to win promotional items, they tend to take part in it. The other part is the cause marketing, and that can't be discounted at all. Fact of the matter is that in social as well, most people don't have to do anything to get the benefit of being associated with some sort of donation or cause. So whether it's the U.S. veterans organizations that we support very heavily via our QR code campaigns, or whether it's the Nature Conservancy who plant trees around the United States, if you take action on something, all of a sudden a message appears in your Facebook stream saying, John Doe just helped plant a tree, you know, in the Western United States. Now, he didn't do anything except click on the QR code. We actually spend the money to donate to whatever cause it is, but all of a sudden they get a sort of guilt by association. And people love that, right? Everyone likes to talk about how good and nice they are. So we benefit from that as well. We also do a lot of location-based stuff, and what I mean by that is when this information, after you scan the QR code, this information gets fed into your social stream in Facebook, and it also says where you were. So it may say, I helped out the Wounded Warriors at Red Robin in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Now, Red Robin gets a benefit from that because they're, now, again, associated right in your Facebook stream. And research, as it relates to recommendations of restaurants, finds that people tend to give 50% more weight to a recommendation on a restaurant from their friend than they do from anything else. So again, it's word of mouth. It increases traffic for that particular Red Robin. It feeds into social media. In fact, it's actually crucial that it ties into social media. Otherwise, we wouldn't benefit, the restaurants wouldn't benefit, and the individual people wouldn't benefit. And all that word of mouth benefits both us as the manufacturer and those restaurants. And ultimately, the content is worthwhile. There's something there that is intriguing enough and of interest enough to people. The consumer experience is very simple. That's the other thing that I can't drive home enough, is that the site's completely mobile optimized. There's very little that we ask the consumer to do. It's, you choose a few options, you fill in your name, you fill in the restaurant in the city, and you share it right out. It's no muss, no fuss, and you're probably still waiting for your food to come out after you've done this, right? So the benefit to a consumer is that they could win something, they get associated with a charity, they get to identify themselves by virtue of what they've done, and ultimately it's really shareable, which benefits not only the consumer, but ultimately benefits us. From a customer standpoint, it drives traffic like I was talking about earlier. The restaurant now gets associated with whatever philanthropic efforts or whatever good that we're doing, and the result is that they have positive customers who are now impressed that, say, Red Robin again, is helping Heinz, who's helping veterans. It's a win for everybody involved in the particular chain of the experience. It's a very low cost investment, and that's something that people also need to understand. Beyond the content and the site development that would have to exist no matter what the execution was, the QR code expense is negligible, like in the few $100 range. So the beauty is that to actually do it costs you very little money. Now, everything you deliver on the back end, whether it's the content or the experience, that costs you money, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's intrinsically tied to the tactic. For us, it's been pretty incredible returns. Very low investment, over 2 million scans, as well as 2 million visits to our sites, which for a CPG, people tend to not go to your websites very often. There's not much reason to go there unless you're looking for recipes. So for us to get 2 million site visits is pretty incredible, and to use that to message what we are, which is what is of interest to us at that time, is really worthwhile. The third one is a seemingly mind-boggling one, over 1.5 billion impressions. Again, for almost no investment. We're going to make a label for the bottle no matter what. So to put a little bit of information on there that messages what's important to us doesn't cost us any more money, because that label's going to be there whether the QR code information is on there or not. So we get 1.5 billion impressions out of that, which, again, the media cost of that would be astronomical. We get it virtually for free. We've also increased our social presences as well. And most importantly, at the end of the day, we've seen incremental lift, sales lift from our food service business. And the last one is the one that matters the most to Heinz, because if we didn't sell any more product, we probably wouldn't really continue that much, or we wouldn't put that much effort into it. So it's all ultimately about selling ketchup. So in summary, they work. I'm sure a lot of you have heard or read things over the last few years that QR codes don't work, no one understands them, they're dumb, they're going to go away. I'm here to tell you they're not going anywhere, at least as it relates to Heinz, and they can actually work if you provide context, if you provide something of value, if it's really nice and simple. And how does this relate to the enterprise? When we're messaging things internally at a company, and I happen to work for corporate communications, that's the larger department that I work for at Heinz. When you're trying to message things to employees, you can email them, you can put it on your intranet, you can try and put it into the social stream if you have a social enterprise at your company. But honestly, just like in the real world, most discussion happens offline. Most impressions happen offline. So while you're waiting for the elevator, or while you're waiting to go in the building, or while you're sitting in the company cafeteria and there's a little tabletop, those are all areas where you can use a QR code and entice your internal constituents to scan it and get whatever important message it is. Ultimately, that message has to be worthwhile, but it's a phenomenal way to get people directly to your website or whatever your interest is digitally. So, thank you.
I bet we have questions.
Any questions?
Why isn't it native to cell phones yet? I don't understand why it's...
I don't know either. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, the moment that Apple or Android throws it on there, it'll be a big game change. I mean, to tell you the truth, barcode scanning isn't native either, and that's actually becoming a big, at least in the US, a big factor for shopping and price comparison. So at some point, someone's going to put a red laser as a native app, and then it's going to be off to the races. Yes?
Is there any collaboration issue on what you've presented until now? What I took is the social aspect is only like the marketing aspect that you use the social networks for marketing, etc. But is there any kind of collaboration so that you listen to your customers? Do you get any input? Is it an interaction, or is it only one-way marketing?
It's relatively one-way, transactional. That being said, when these promotions are at full tilt on for a particular campaign, if you go to the ketchup page in the US, the bulk of the consumer comments on the page tend to be related to the QR code campaign. And we respond and correspond and engage and comment back and forth with our consumers on that page, whether they come in through the QR code or whether they come in just through the regular Facebook page. So there is some level of engagement, but there's not any true collaboration. We don't use this for any sort of traditional collaborative means by any means.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.